Their journey to space was only meant to be 5 years. They wound up flying around for 700. Where did that much food come from? You don't just magically produce 7 centuries of food out of thin air. Cupcake in a cup? What's that? What is it? It's people. They're eating each other. It's the only explanation. Cupcake in a cup, it's people. WALL-E is about cannibalism.
There's more.
Dude, that is so true to think about. How the fuck are they on a ship just getting food? In Earth, there's no way. Dude, what the fuck, bro? It's the little details, man, that you just never think about.
The theory is all about the food situation in my favorite Pixar movie, WALL-E, pointing out that in the film we see humanity herded onto giant spaceships owned by the Megacorp by and large. They were originally planned to provide a 5-year getaway vacation to humanity while robots cleaned up the garbage fire that was Earth, but as it turned out, things were polluted beyond repair, turning that 5-year getaway into a 700-year multi-generational voyage.
Hey there, autopilots. Got some bad news. Operation Cleanup has, well, failed. Rather than try and fix this problem, it'll just be easier for everyone to remain in space. Okay, I'm giving override Directive A113. Go to full autopilot, take control of everything, and do not return to Earth.
My original theory took those facts and ran with them. A 5-year vacation stretched into a 700-year voyage means that there are 695 years worth of food unaccounted for.
Dude,
that's gonna be a problem because the Starliner that our story takes place on, the Axiom, seemingly has no renewable source of food given the fact that people on board are unfamiliar with the basic concept of plant.
Where's the thingy? Plant, right. Well, where is it?
Oh sure, we hear briefly that the ship has a regenerative food buffet.
Regenerative food buffet.
Unchanged.
But that system is also run entirely by the autopilot, a computer that's adhering to Directive A113. As we just heard, it means taking control of everything to ensure that humans do not return to planet Earth, even if plant life is found. So how do you regenerate food when there seems to be no other source? Well, you do it using people. After all, a centuries-long journey with hundreds of thousands of passengers means that a lot of people are kicking the bucket along the way. And when presented with the problem of what to do with all those human cadavers, the robots who run everything can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, dispose of the bodies while feeding the remaining guests. After all, everyone on the Starliner consumes everything through a straw. Add enough artificial flavoring and who's gonna know the difference? But since that video's release 4 years ago, you've asked a lot of questions down in the comments, and I've realized a few things that I missed in that original theory. So today we're getting a little bit meta. Call it a film theory, going back into the archives and updating an old theory by filling in a few holes and answering some of the questions you've left along the way. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Morty time. Okay, first things first, evidence points I missed. After going back through the movie and all its associated media, I noticed 2 key details that really hammer this conspiracy home. The first is that there are no old people on the Axiom. None. There's 2 guys who are balding with gray hair, but they don't look old. In fact, if you scan across the character models that we see whizzing by in the movie, not one is wrinkled, elderly, slow, or frail. They all have smooth skin and nice hair, even if that hair is gray. And mind you, this isn't just a selective sample of a few dozen characters. We see hundreds of Axiom passengers over the course of this movie. You'd think that at least 1 or 2 of them would be elderly in some way, but no, none, nada. It's almost as though the ship disposes of those individuals who get advanced in their age.
Christ,
so that's
dude.
suspicious detail number 1. Number 2, though, flies directly in the face of that replenishing food buffet that I mentioned earlier. When we joined the Axiom in year 700 of the flight, everything is served blended up in a cup. There is no solid food, which, sure, okay, might be some sort of replenishing nutrition beverage that they've always had. Except we have proof that that isn't the case. Looking at some of the bonus video clips released alongside the movie, we see that the Axiom started by serving solid food. In this promo video to get humans to join the Axiom voyage, we see that the ship used to serve solid meats. Odd to transition away from that policy if food really is replenishable automatically. We also know that there's no organic food waste on the ship. Throughout the film, we explore all the various garbage chutes present on board, and we see that it's all composed of mechanical waste. Metals, parts, old robots, no peels, rinds, old unused food, dead bodies, nothing. Just saying that the replenishing food story is shaky at best. Now, in the comments, a lot of people were asking about about oxygen. Fugel, Mr. Cool, Murfaria, Hussein Ahmed, and more, with many saying that the fact that the humans are still breathing oxygen must mean that there's plants on boards, and then presumably farms. Well, actually, that's not true. For one thing, as I pointed out earlier, no one has ever seen a plant before, so it seems unlikely that there'd be a section of the ship actively growing plants. But more importantly, supplying enough oxygen for a single human requires a lot of plants. On average, it takes the equivalent of about 8 trees to satisfy the oxygen needs of an adult human, which would mean that if the B&L Starliners were making oxygen the old-fashioned way, they'd need to have more plants on board than humans. More to the point, though, the how to get oxygen in space thing isn't something we have to speculate about, because it's a problem that's actually been solved by real-world scientists. The International Space Station has been in orbit for over 20 years, and there are 7 people living there now, all of whom are breathing just fine without having to bring 50-plus trees with them. On the International Space Station, oxygen is created using electrolysis, a chemical process that involves using electricity to split water. You know how water's chemical formula is H2O? That O in there is actually very breathable oxygen. In the previous video, I already established that the Axiom would have no trouble harvesting water from asteroids, and electricity is also a solved problem thanks to solar power, so the presence of oxygen on board doesn't actually prove anything in this case. That said, there is one massive correction that I have to make from that previous video. Whether cannibalism does, in fact, solve the Axiom's food problem. Can man survive on man alone? In general, a human cadaver is good for around 80,000 calories, something that I brought up in that first episode. More recent studies, though, have been done since I uploaded that original video. Clearly, I was the one who put cannibalism research back on the scientific community's map, so you're welcome, guys. These more recent studies estimate that the number is now closer to 125,800 calories. But regardless of which number it is, it still leaves us with a huge problem. It's nowhere close to what a human needs to eat in order to survive to adulthood. If an average person is eating 2,000 calories per day, it means that a single human cadaver is only good for about 63 days worth of meals, barely over 2 months of food. It would take a minimum of 397 cadavers to provide a lifetime's worth of sustenance. And mind you, that's for an 80-year lifespan. The dates that we see for previous captains suggest that people might be living for as long as 200 years. At that rate, the Axiom's starting crew of 600,000 people would only feed a population of 1,511. That seems to really bust the cannibalism theory. While the population on board the ship would most certainly be going down generation after generation, there's no way it could be going down that fast. So, is the theory busted? Well, I'm not quite done. You see, while I was wrong in that original theory to not take into account whether human bodies could sustain the population, I was also wrong about the calories that those human bodies would be providing. Sure, a human is worth 125,800 calories, but that's an average 145-pound or 66-kilogram person. The people that we see on board the Axiom are just a wee bit heavier. They're barely able to walk. Currently, the world record holder for the heaviest human is a man named Juan Pedro Franco, who weighed in at, take a guess. Seriously, I want you to take a guess at this one, because everyone I've asked so far starts at around like 700 pounds or 317 kilograms. Take that and double it. At his heaviest, Juan Pedro was 1,300 pounds, 590 kilograms. Now, obviously, the passengers on the Axiom aren't that heavy, but the reason I bring it up here is that Juan Pedro, as part of his efforts to get healthier, lost over 700 pounds, managing to slim down to a weight of 570 or 260 kilos, which was where he was able to regain his ability to walk. As such, I'm going to use that weight for our Axiom guests who are also just barely able to walk. So knowing that, the other thing that we have to factor in here is that fat has more caloric density than muscle. In fact, fat is the most caloric food source. That's the entire point of fat. It's your body storing up energy for the future. A pound of meat is good for about 650 calories. A pound of body fat contains closer to 3,500. That's 5 times as many calories. This means that a single Axiom passenger suddenly goes from providing over 100,000 calories to a whopping 3.85 million calories at the time that they get ground up into a human smoothie. Add to that the sedentary lifestyle of everyone on board, and you drop the number of calories that the passengers need per day from 2,000 to something closer to 1,400. Ironically, the fact that the Axiom passengers have such a high body fat to muscle ratio both makes them more efficient as a source of food and also reduces their need for food. It's a win-win across the board, I guess. Suddenly, a single Axiom passenger goes from needing to consume nearly 400 people to survive for one lifetime to only having to eat 9. And that, shockingly shockingly enough, seems very reasonable. I mean, once you've eaten your first human, the rest go down easy. Consider this. Last episode I mentioned that during the course of the 700-year journey, the Axiom has had at minimum 2 million dead bodies. 600,000 people all living lifespans of about 150 years. Turn them into food, and that's enough to feed over 222,000 humans for a lifetime. And if you're an autopilot program meant to keep as much of the population alive in space for as long as possible, that seems like a pretty darn efficient use of your available resources. So there you have it, friends. I still stand by this one. Between all the evidence during our first go-around and all the new additions here, including the surprising lack of elderly people on board and the shockingly efficient food source that human fat provides, I have yet to really see anything disproving this one. You know what they say, human meat can't be beat. But hey, that's
just a theory. Oh my god. Leave your guys' comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. That's crazy. He definitely, you know, proved his point, even with the controversy around it. That's, wow. Holy shit. That is crazy to think about. We're going to watch part 3